Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us in our first installment of a new series from the Portland Press Herald. It's called Insider Tips on the Outdoors. Tonight's show is going to be dealing with skiing, and we're very fortunate to have Josh Christie join us. Josh is a ski columnist for the Portland Press Herald. You can read him every other Sunday in our outdoors section, including this coming Sunday. And he is also the author of 4 books, including Skiing Maine, which he co-wrote with his father, John Christie. John sadly died a few years back, but was well-known within the ski industry in Maine, had great, vast knowledge of the state, and taught Josh how to ski. And Josh was able to learn from a very good man. So we're glad to have Josh here tonight. Here's a little bit about what our series is going to be this year, Insider Tips on the Outdoors. So these will be hour-long discussions that we'll have during this throughout the year, and each one is going to be geared towards a different subject. Some of those subjects include fishing and hunting. We'll also have a show on hiking, another one on paddling, and a 6th show on birding as well. Each of these discussions will be one-on-ones with experts in each of these various sports or activities. In many cases, like Josh, these folks are columnists for the Maine Sunday Telegram Portland Press Herald, and you'll recognize them. Josh, tonight we'll be talking about everything to do with skiing in Maine. It's going to range from tips for novices and experts alike when it comes to newest enhancements, the newest in technology when it comes to ski equipment, what's going on at the ski areas, etc. It's sure to be a fun discussion. Our host tonight will be my colleague, Deirdre Fleming. Deirdre has been the outdoors reporter for the Portland Press Herald for the past 2 decades. And if you haven't had a chance to do this yet, you should check out her most recent feature, which appeared in this Sunday's Maine Sunday Telegram. It's an excellent piece about Shawnee Peak in Bridgeton and how it got its name, kind of an unusual name for the state of Maine, and how some skiers want to see it reverted back to its original name. You can view that story along with Josh's columns and all of our outdoors content at pressherald.com/outdoors. Again, that's pressherald.com/outdoors. Let me turn it over now to my colleague, Deirdre Fleming.
Good evening, everyone. And Josh, I'm really glad that Don mentioned your dad, because you're not only the author of 4 books and a columnist for us for going on 10 years now, and the co-owner of an independent bookstore, but I think a lot of people, especially those skiers and snowboarders over 60, would wonder, do you have that last name because you're related to that famous guy who was a legend in the ski industry? And your dad not only owned Saddleback for a time in the 70s, he was the general manager at Sugarloaf during the Amos Winter era, and he wrote the book. That's on a lot of coffee tables up at Sugarloaf, the definitive book on Sugarloaf. And as you know, your dad was a dear friend of mine, who I love skiing with. And one of my favorite stories that he used to tell was how after he sold Saddleback in 1975, he was disenchanted with the alpine industry and just quit downhill skiing cold turkey and embraced Nordic skiing, which is so cool. And he used to ski in the woods all the time until you and your twin brother, Jake, came along in the late 80s. And then as you two were growing up, and correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, you two got John back into downhill skiing. So talk a little bit about what skiing was like back then, 25 years ago, learning to ski in Maine, skiing with your dad. I assume because you grew up in Washington that you learned at the Camden Snow Bowl.
Yeah, and you're very kind in terms of my age, because it was 35 years ago that I started learning how to ski. I appreciate that and appreciate the kind intro as well. Yeah, I grew up in a little town called Washington in Knox County. So grew up skiing, as many people in Maine do, Nordic skiing on snowmobile trails, basically, and on Washington Pond, which is the pond nearest our house where we were growing up. So a lot of tromping around in the woods. I really got to enjoy Nordic skiing. I think the piece that was left out of that story is my dad went back to Nordic skiing after he sold Saddleback, but it was the first time that he really got to enjoy Nordic skiing, because in high school and college, he was a racer. And anyone that has Nordic ski raced knows that it is kind of typified, especially in those days, by going all out as hard as you can and just puking at the end. So not the fun leisurely sport that a lot of us enjoy now. But yeah, I grew up Nordic skiing on the trails around the house. And then when I was 5 or 6, so 1991, somewhere around there, went to a ski swap up in Bangor and get a pair of Dynastar skis. We're going to talk a little bit later about how people can get skis inexpensively, and you've written great stuff about how ski swaps are a great way to do that. But got Dynastars, still remember the brand of my first pair of skis, and started hiking up the little main slope in front of the lodge at the Camber and Snowmobile. Don't tell the Snowmobile, we weren't buying tickets at that point. We were just hiking up as far as we could and skiing down. And that kind of got me hooked. So we started bopping around to a lot of the smaller ski areas in Maine. Big Moose up in Greenville, Mount Abram, Shawnee, Camden Snowball a lot, like I said. And then my father kind of rediscovered Sugarloaf, and I discovered Sugarloaf for the first time when they did the auction and took down the gondola, which he had helped to put up in the 60s. And that really got me hooked on skiing at Sugarloaf. And so I spent most of my high school years skiing there a couple days every weekend. So 20, 30 days a year. During high school, it drove me to get into college at the University of Maine in Farmington in the ski industries program. As my father used to say, because there wasn't a college in Kingfield. So I went to college in Farmington, the closest place that I could. And yeah, that's kind of, I think that more than answers your question. I'm sorry for going on.
No, it's great stuff. And more recently, so as I said, you have an independent bookstore that's been very successful. And I think you told me it's in its 5th year. And good for you for, in your first 5 years, keeping a bookstore so successful, with 2 of them being pandemic years.
Thank you.
But you also managed to do some alpine skiing during the pandemic, despite being so busy as an independent business owner. So talk a little bit about, for people maybe who didn't get out skiing so much during the pandemic, what it's been like, what you've seen the last 2 years, what changes you've seen during the pandemic.
Sure. I'll talk both broadly and specifically. Broadly, just generally speaking, skiing during the pandemic has been a lot more solitude, a lot more time out of the lodge. Last season, during the season, pretty much every lodge at every ski area in the state did not have, you couldn't sit inside to eat or anything like that, couldn't store your stuff in cubbies inside. You were packing your own lunch, or if you were buying it, you were eating it in your car. Similarly, they were loading lifts only with people in your bubble. So if you came up alone, if you were a single, you'd give share to yourself rather than getting packed together with other people. So that made the experience really, really different of skiing. And some of that still sustains today. I was at Sunday River earlier today, and they still don't have any indoor storage under tables or in cubbies or anything like that. They do have cubbies outside. I think similarly, a lot of places have moved towards cashless transactions using either Apple Pay or a debit card or something like that to reduce touch and contact between people. And also, pretty much everyone is moving towards RFID lift tickets. So a scanned lift ticket that you kind of go through an RFID gate rather than getting your ticket checked by a person, which again will help keep distance between people. And then I think in terms of specifics, the really big one, obviously, is Saddleback reopening after being closed for a couple of years. They reopened last season and are open again this season with some really great skiing. And I think specifically this season, just talking about some of the changes that were made at different resorts. Lost Valley widened 2 beginner trails. They updated their lighting. They updated their snowmaking. They got a new groomer. And maybe most importantly to anyone that's been to Lost Valley in the last 20 years, they tore up and resurfaced the entire access road, which was just a nightmare of potholes for years. So it's a much smoother ride when you're headed from Auburn into the ski area. Sunday River installed about 10 miles of snowmaking pipe and added over 100 snowmaking guns. They also put in a new fixed grip chairlift and 4 trails on Merrill Hill, which is part of a new development that will be open probably on a limited basis this year and then open more broadly next year. Sugarloaf as well upgraded their snowmaking system. They added like 100 snow guns. Mount Abram added a new drive to their main lift and they upgraded their snowmaking. Titcomb upgraded their groomers, and then Spruce Mountain also upgraded their groomers by getting Titcomb's old groomer. So that's the new groomer at
Nice.
Spruce Mountain. Saddleback, in addition to opening 2 years ago, they just invested $2 million in the last year in snowmaking upgrades. They got 2 new groomers. They added 3 new surface lifts, T-bar replacing one of the old ones, a magic carpet lift in the beginner area, and then a rope tow for the terrain park. Shawnee Peak is, as you've written about just this last week, they significantly upgraded their snowmaking, but more importantly, have new ownership in the form of Boyne, which is the same corporation that owns Sugarloaf and Sunday River. Black Mountain of Maine, thanks to a group of volunteers called the Angry Beavers, added a bunch of new glades over the off season. So yeah, there's a lot of changes. Even if people skied last year, there's a lot of changes going into the 2021-2022 season.
Very cool. I wanted to move on and talk about trends sort of over a longer period of time, but I was asked to remind people later on when we take questions, and we did get emailed some questions that we're going to answer, Josh is going to answer, but to please put them in the Q&A below, just because they'll be a lot more visible for us. But at this time, I'd like to ask our brilliant event coordinator, Strawberry, to throw up those graphics from the Nordic skiing industry. And I got these from the Cross Country Ski Areas Association. It was a survey that they had conducted in January, so it's very recent. And it actually mirrors the survey that they did last ski season. And it shows a lot of new trends in the Nordic skiing industry across the country. These are from 1,500 skiers at a couple of hundred cross-country Nordic ski centers across the country. And as you can see, it shows the demand for rentals is up, lesson sales are up, season passes are up, retail sales are up. But what I find most interesting, and this was a new trend last year, was that at Nordic ski, at cross-country ski centers, almost half the people are skiing during the week compared to most people skiing on the weekend, which used to be the trend. And they did a survey in the fall. The Cross Country Skiers Association did a similar follow-up survey and asked people, what do they anticipate when they'll be skiing? And in that survey, 48% said they intend to ski midweek and 48% said they intend to ski on the weekends. And the recent survey in January sort of bears that out. It's very, very close. It's almost 50-50. So Josh, I just sort of wanted to ask if you think this will be a trend that continues, and if you've seen anything similar at alpine areas as you've done a lot of downhill skiing, because I think you mentioned you have the midweek pass, so you do a lot of your skiing during the week.
I do. I have a midweek pass to Sugarloaf and Sunday River, so I do pretty much all of my skiing midweek. There are many difficult parts of owning a small business in an independent bookstore, but one is being able to set my own schedule. And I got spoiled when I went to school in Farmington skiing midweek. So skiing weekends, you know, you've got the crowds to deal with. It's a whole different sport on weekends. And I have done everything I can to stick to midweek. But I think that's it's true. So sorry to answer your question. I think it is true at alpine areas as well. And I think it's another result of the pandemic, as so many people have moved to remote work. I think it has given people some flexibility in making their schedules. And I think people, even if the trends are moving in this direction, people still think weekend busy, weekday not busy, and are building their schedules that way. So I think it makes a lot of sense. I was at Sunday River like I said earlier today, and it was the busiest Monday I have seen as a skier in years. That can certainly be blamed on the snow this last weekend, but still speaks to people either building their schedule around or taking a sick day to go up to the mountain during the week.
But you would never do that.
Never. I don't have to since I own the business. I get to tell people that it is out of the kindness of my heart to my employees that I am scheduling them with weekends off and working weekends, but really it's so I can ski on weekdays.
Nice. So what are some other trends over the last several years, like 5 to 10 to 15 years? I've heard a lot during the pandemic of people who are getting back into downhill or Nordic skiing, or of course, people who are taking up new sports. I mean, across the board, outdoors wise during the pandemic, sales of everything from paddle sports to ATVs, to snowmobiles, to, fishing gear, everything is up. So for people who are getting into downhill or cross-country skiing, or people again who've been away from it, what are some trends that you're seeing in the industry?
I think probably the biggest one I'm seeing, at least anecdotally, but I think this is borne out by data from the National Skiers Association, is an increase in people doing uphill access. So rather than buying a lift ticket at a ski area, buying uphill access tickets and then skinning up. So putting skins on the bottom of their skis so they can move uphill, skinning up the mountain under their own locomotion and skiing down themselves. I think that it speaks to a couple different things. It speaks to the cost. Uphill access is generally much cheaper than a lift ticket. I think Sugarloaf, for example, I may have the numbers wrong because I don't have them in front of me, but I would say approximately, a day lift ticket at the window on a weekend is over $100. I think their uphill access ticket is $15. So obviously a big gulf in terms of price there. And I think it also speaks to people wanting to be able to do stuff outdoor that is healthy, outdoor that is kind of exercise that's both anaerobic and aerobic, rather than short bursts of energy, the kind of marathon feeling of going up a mountain before you ski down. And I think that it does provide that same space during a global pandemic of not being loaded onto the lift or into a lodge with people.
Right. That sport, also called alpine touring, has been increasing slowly, but it's interesting, all these ski areas around Maine that are adding dedicated uphill trails. Black Mountain's got one. I know Saddleback has one. Mount Abram has one. And as you noted, the uphill pass, or the uphill ticket as it's called, is just really $15. I think there's some place, we're going to talk about deals later, but there's one ski area that, Black Mountain, Thursday and Friday, the uphill pass is just $5.
Yeah.
So who would have ever thought you could go downhill skiing in the winter, at a Maine resort and just pay $5?
Yeah, either that or Powderhouse Hill for sure.
And I did hear that that Saddleback is going to offer classes in this, just like it's ski school. It's going to have backcountry classes.
Yeah, I know the rollout has been slowed down a little because of the pandemic, but I know that it's on deck for them. So if it hasn't started yet, it should start this season. If not, then certainly next year they'll be doing that.
Very cool. And what are some other trends? You had mentioned when we talked last week, there's like bundling passes is something you didn't see 20 years ago. Again, for people who've been away from skiing, but want to get back into it or starting to ski with their kids. That's something new, right?
Yeah, that's maybe the biggest sea change in the industry I've seen in terms of changing how people are accessing the mountain and how people are getting lift tickets. Because as opposed to a traditional season pass, which you would buy that would work at a resort either all season or with some blackout days like mine, or in the case of corporately owned mountains like Sunday River, Sugarloaf, and Loon have a pass that you can buy that works at all three of them. The two big outfits in the US are one's called Epic and one's called Icon, and they are passes that get you, depending on the level of pass and which one you buy, unlimited access or a number of lift tickets to a bunch of different resorts all over the country. So it's a much different way of accessing mountains that relies on you trying out a bunch of different places as opposed to dedicating yourself to a mountain during the winter. And another one I wanted to mention, which is very cool that Saddleback is a part of, is the Indy Pass, which is independently owned ski areas. And the pass gets you 2-day tickets to each, and I think is $350 or something like that, something close to that. And just doing some quick back of the napkin math, I think a day ticket at Saddleback on the weekend now is $99. So you use your 2 tickets there and you've almost paid your pass off, and then you can use it at a bunch of places in, I know, Cannon in New Hampshire. You can use it at Jay Peak in Vermont, neither of which is a inexpensive day lift ticket. So it really pays for itself fairly quickly, which is the whole idea behind a season's pass in the first place, right? That you are getting an ROI, getting a return on investment by utilizing it as much as possible, which is what the mountains hope as well.
Right. I was going to ask you, with any of those passes, say someone wants to ski at other ski areas, but can't afford to fly out west, or maybe doesn't want to fly out west during the pandemic, they just want to drive. And you mentioned how Cannon and Jay are part of the independent ski areas bundled pass. Do the other 2 offer ski mountains in New England? Somebody wanted to get those and just drive around New England?
Yeah, Icon and Epic both have different lists, which I do not know off the top of my head, but Icon Pass and Epic Pass, if you Google those, it will give you the whole list. And they are certainly not a ton of coverage in Maine for sure, but Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, there's a lot of places. So yeah, it's a little bit of a drive, but again, that can be fun in addition to being economical.
Definitely. And you had mentioned modern snowmaking is becoming a game changer as climate change becomes more of a concern.
Yeah, I feel like, and we'll talk later, like ski technology, chairlifts, so much of that technology changing seems incremental rather than revolutionary. You have a gear that's a little more comfortable, you have a chair that's a little bit faster, but snowmaking is really, like, when I was growing up, if it was 30 degrees out, a lot of the places that were making snow would have a gun that would put something out that was like the consistency of a slush puppy. You're skiing on barely frozen water all over the mountain. And now, like right around freezing, the new tower guns that are a bunch of different places make snow that is not indistinguishable from the real thing, but pretty damn close. It's amazing what kind of stuff can be put out. And to those concerns of climate change, kind of, 2 points. One is that as the earth gets warmer and we get less natural snow, we're going to rely more and more on snowmaking. And the other being that this new technology is much more energy efficient, much more environmentally friendly in terms of the amount of air and water that it's using to create snow. So that's really important going forward as well, if we want to be able to continue doing this sport.
Right. When did you notice this? You talk about the snow being almost indistinguishable from natural snow. When did you start to notice that change? I mean, it wasn't like 10 years ago, right? It was a little bit more recent than that.
I think it was more recent. Yeah, there's the high efficiency tower guns, which I know are getting installed at a lot of ski resorts, but specifically Sunday River, because that's usually where I start my season. They have often opened in November or even October. They are not usually doing that on natural snow. They're doing it on man-made snow. And I think when I started being able to ski on opening day under the guns that were running, have the snow feel good underfoot and not be covered in a sheet of ice and ice droplets on my goggles when I got down to the base, I knew that, wow, this has changed from how it was when I was a kid.
Very cool. One trend I wanted to ask you about, I think I might have mentioned this to you when I was doing that Shawnee Peak story for Sunday on the name and how some skiers and snowboarders think it should change back to the original name of Pleasant Mountain. A woman at who's a season pass holder at Shawnee Peak, and her family moved from Massachusetts to Freiburg in part to be close to a mountain where her sons could ski, and one of them is now a Division I skier, so the family's very invested in skiing. She had said that she feels like she keeps seeing on social media that small mountains are becoming more of the thing, and more people are sort of adopting and calling small mountains home. Do you see any of that, or do you see the potential for that sort of a shift?
I think I see both see it in actuality and see the potential for that. Again, getting back to, like, I feel like the thing around the neck of skiing that we should talk about is just the cost and how it needs to be more accessible if we want it to survive as the biggest generation of skiers. Baby boomers kind of ages out of skiing, and we need new skiers to come in. There's this idea of smaller mountains being feeder mountains. It's a term that's been around in the industry for ages. And the idea that not everyone can afford to either regularly ski or afford to learn at one of the big resorts. So you need a place that is local and friendly and affordable and accessible to be able to get started in the sport before moving on to these bigger places, which are, more like these big amusement parks. They're these big 4-star things. Not to say that small local places aren't great, but it's a different thing looking at a resort with 140 trails and looking at Snowmobile, where I grew up skiing, where you can see the whole thing right in front of you when you're standing in front of it. So I think that a lot of people are finding the value in local areas, both literally the value in terms of economics, but also figuratively the value. And with so many people, as you mentioned, on the Nordic side, this is true on the Alpine side as well. Over the last 2 years, so many people coming back to the sport or trying the sport. It's really great if you can go somewhere that is an hour away. There's a lot more small mountains local to people than the destination resorts, which are called such because you really have to make a trip to go to them.
Right. So let's, as we move on to talk about tips for getting into the sport, let's dive right into deals. That was among the dozen or so questions that were emailed to us. That was 2 big ones, and people specifically worded it in such a way as, is alpine skiing specifically only a wealthy person's sport? But when we talked about that last week, you made the case that deals can be had. You got to do the research. You got to look around. Maybe you look at the small mountain that's closer to you than the destination resorts, and there are deals out there that can make it pretty affordable for most people, for a lot of people anyway.
Yeah, it's always a hard question to even approach in some ways, because what is affordable to one person is not affordable to another person, right? And it depends on how much you want to ski as well. For some people, a $40 lift ticket, which I would say is the price at most of the resorts in Maine, you take out Shawnee Peak, Saddleback, Sugarloaf, and Sunday River, most of them are 40, 45 or less. I think that's an affordable price for a full day of skiing. I know that for some people that is a lot, and I totally understand that. But there are these different levels in terms of what you can do in terms of skiing. And then, as you mentioned at the top of this, some of it comes down to timing. If you're able to ski midweek, as I am, it tends to be much less expensive. Weekends and holidays are always going to be more expensive. If you're looking to buy a lift ticket at the booth when you get to the mountain, it's always going to be more expensive than buying them beforehand, which pretty much every resort allows you to do at this point. So you and pretty much everyone does promotions as well. If you look at Shawnee Peak has the Monday Night Madness, which is a cheaper ticket that goes an hour later, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of how late they have skiing on Mondays. So that helps a lot. I know in the past, Abram has done like carload deals where you pay basically $100, I think it was, or whatever it was, for everyone that you fit in your car safely, like everyone that has a seatbelt. But the more people you bring, the less expensive it is for each person. So that kind of thing. Everyone has deals, and I think like seeking that out is a lot of legwork. Like, it would be great if we didn't have to do that in terms of getting inexpensive skiing, but it does allow you to get out and do the sport.
One thing people can do if they can't get a weekday off and they only have their weekends off, but they can't afford the lift tickets on weekends, is those skiers that have night skiing. And you mentioned the Monday Night Madness at Shawnee Peak. Their regular adult lift ticket on weekends is $83. And on weekdays, it's $65, which still is probably pretty expensive for a lot of people just going for one day. But then if you do the night skiing, it's $45 on the weekends, Monday through 30, it's $39. Monday Night Madness is $27. And LL Bean has been sponsoring a lot of ski days at a lot of smaller mountains this year. And the LL Bean Family Ski Night at Shawnee, I don't know what night it is, but it's $30. So if you're willing to ski at night and go later in the afternoon, that also makes it a little bit more affordable.
Yeah, and that's one way to get out in the middle of the week if you do have a job that you're going to be at till 4 or 5 and can't get to the mountain until after that. And I think doing a little research before this call, again, taking out a couple of the destination resorts in Maine, most of the ski areas in Maine, a season's pass, if you buy it in the summer before the season, is around $500 or less. And then it's just quick math of, if you think you'll get out 10 times that season, then each time costs you $50. If you're going to get out 20, each time costs you $25. Mike Salisbury has a great blog called Maine Ski Family, and he did what he called the season pass ROI, which was just for every pass, the cost of a season's pass divided by the cost of a day ticket at the window equals you need to go this many days to pay it off. And for most places, even, you know, your big destination resorts, if you're going to go more than, you know, if you're getting into double digits, if you're going to go more than 10, 11, 12 times a season, it starts to pay for itself. Again, the question of whether the pass is affordable in the first place really, you know, really is important. And that's another discussion to have. But I think that there are ways that people can make it affordable for their budget is probably the best way to put it.
Another cool deal, if you can afford it, you mentioned, I don't know if you've ever taken advantage of it yourself, but is the Maine Pass that gives you a bundled group of different ski areas. And when you did the math for me last week, that cocktail napkin math, that comes down to like under $20, doesn't it?
Yeah,
like a day for skiing.
So there's two different products. So Boyne has the Maine Pass, which is to Sugarloaf, Sunday River, and presumably next year Shawnee Peak as well. They haven't announced anything, but with the shared ownership, I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. But then Ski Maine has the Ski Maine Passport. So yeah, so Ski Maine, the nonprofit trade association that, full disclosure, I interned for when I was in college in the ski industries program, has a pass book that you can buy during the summer. They do a limited number every year, so you want to buy it early. But it's a pass book of 2 lift tickets to every mountain in the state. Essentially, I think there's 1 or 2. You have to pick either, I think it's like Quaggy Joe or Lonesome Pines. Like you don't get both, you pick one or the other. But it's a book of 2 tickets to each. They are no blackout dates, so you can go whenever you want to, holidays, weekends, all of that. And they're transferable. So if you want to go up with a friend or are unable to use them and want to give them off to one of your friends, you can do that. So it's an incredible deal. The idea being also that rather than being tied to a specific mountain like you are with a season's pass, you're exploring every mountain in the state. And to loop it back to what we were talking about in terms of technology, in terms of snowmaking, but also grooming and stuff like that, every ski area in the state is putting out a great product. If you think of the product as the snow, like everywhere has good grooming, everywhere has good snowmaking. Some places the technology is newer than other places, but there's great skiing everywhere in Maine, which is another important piece of the affordability thing. It's not just the destination places that you can get in some good skiing.
Definitely. I think you said that pass is like around $525 and you get 2 tickets to 16 areas. So it's 32 days of skiing. It's just that if you can spend that much for a season pass, that's a lot of days of skiing.
Yeah.
As an independent business owner now, rather than a Farmington student, UMF student, didn't you say you skied 100 days at UMF? And how many days do you ski now?
The math was always fun in the ski industries program at UMF because all of us were we had on-hill class. Well, maybe not obviously, because I don't know how many of the people watching are familiar with the program, but yeah, we had on-hill classes. We did work at Titcomb Mountain as well. So we were on the hill a lot. And at that time also, I think Sugarloaf Sunday Pass Seasons Pass was $350 for students. And I would ski probably 110, 120 days a year, pretty much every day of the season. So it worked out to $275, $3 a day. That's affordable, but in that very specific
In recent years, how many days have you been able to manage?
I try to get in a couple days a week every week. Sometimes I have some days off and I get up a little bit more. Some days in terms of weather or work, it's less. So I would say about 30 days a year now.
Hmm.
So, I get the bronze pass at Sugarloaf and Sunday River, which is $600 if you buy it during the summer. So it works out to $20 a day. So again, affordable if you're able to ski during the week, if you're able to ski that much, and if you're able to put up that payment during the summer rather than during the season. So again, it's qualified, but it's
Right. And I just wanted to note that Nordic ski centers have deals as well. And one that really jumps out at me, and I should mention, no money was exchanged in in talking about this ski area. It sounds really promotional, but I'm blown away by these deals. Rangeley Lakes Trail Center in Rangeley, which I think is a nonprofit, their normal Nordic trail pass is $22. So if you're on vacation for skiing and you're a family or you're a couple and you're going every day, 22 can add up pretty quick. But at Rangeley Lakes Trail Center, the first Sunday of every month is Maine Days, and that's $15. And then they have a ladies' day and a men's day. Ladies' day is Monday, and it's $11 plus a free cup of soup. So you figure like a cup of soup at a restaurant in Portland would cost $11. You're almost skiing for free at Rangeley Trail Center. So and Wednesdays is buy one, get one free, which is so cool. So you go with a friend, you pay $11. That's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I don't want to, again, no money exchange sound like I'm promoting anywhere in particular, but so my partner Stacy just started skiing a couple of years ago. So I've had the joy of seeing someone learn how to ski, and also the reminder of, like this sport, you do need lessons to start off with, and it takes some time to get good at it. But Mount Abram in Greenwood has this incredible deal that's this season, I think they're sold out, but it was $250. $249 to use the advertising, $249. And it's 3 lessons with rentals included. And then at the end of the third lesson, you get a season's pass to their lower mountain area, west side. So $250 gets you started in the sport, gets you the equipment rentals, and then you can ski the rest of the season on your season's pass. So it's really an incredible idea.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That was another one I looked at. And normally Saturday and holidays, it's $55 at Mount Abram. Again, LL Bean is sponsoring, and no money was exchanged mentioning LL Bean, but they've been sponsoring a lot of alpine areas during the pandemic, and possibly some Nordic areas that I'm not aware of. But the LL Bean Sunday at Mount Abram was $35, and weekdays it's $35. And again, that's another one where the uphill pass, if you want to be adventurous and get more exercise and get into alpine touring, that's always a really reasonable pass. We should mention, Josh, because you had reminded me, there are some Nordic trails, cross-country ski trails that are free in the state.
There's quite a few actually. Obviously a lot of land trusts and just trails in general, if you don't mind doing ungroomed, no track set skiing, it's countless the number that there are. A couple that come to mind are a lot of the Portland Trails Network you can ski on, Deering Oaks Park and the Riverside Golf Course, you can ski on both of those. Gilsland Farms in Falmouth, the Audubon Preserve, also free cross-country skiing there, and kind of famously throughout the past, a destination for people when there's snow is the carriage roads up at Acadia as well, which is a beautifully maintained network of trails. But maybe my favorite in terms of the free Nordic trails within an hour of Portland is the old Carter's cross-country ski area in Oxford, which has been kind of resurrected by Oxbow Brewing Company. They built a great new restaurant with their beer right in the old space there where Carter's was. But in addition to that, they have the network of trails. And if I remember correctly, I hope I'm getting this right, I know this was the case, at least to start with, Tim Adams, who owns Oxbow, great outdoorsman, loves cross-country skiing, has a snowmobile and bought a grooming rake to put behind it and grooms the trails up there himself, which is just so charming, I think.
Definitely. Yeah, again, if you do the research, you ask around, a lot of town park and rec departments would know of free trails. And also what I've learned in recent years, my husband and I live in Buxton, And we asked if we could join the Hollis Honker Snowmobile Club because those snowmobile trails across the Saco River are incredible. And the Hollis Honkers Snowmobile Club absolutely welcomes members who are Nordic skiers. So for $40, we're going to join this year. Last year we joined for $40. We got a family pass, and it's unlimited cross-country skiing on amazing groomed snowmobile trails. You have to give snowmobiles the right of way, but they're incredible trails, and they go through the woods, through beautiful parts of Maine. And more, so you have to ask your local snowmobile club if they're open to Nordic skiers. But, you know, some people poach the trails and go on the trails. I feel like you should support the cause, the people who are building the trails and grooming the trails. But more and more snowmobile clubs are welcoming Nordic ski members.
Absolutely.
Used ski gear is something that a bunch of people emailed questions in about. And there are some local ski shops that sell used ski gear, right? As well as the swaps that you mentioned earlier on.
Yeah, like my source growing up for multiple pairs of skis was Play It Again Sports, which I know still has a location in Portland and may have others elsewhere. Really great equipment, but you know, there's lots of options these days. Used equipment, you always want to make sure you either know your stuff or doing your research just in terms of getting appropriate equipment for you. You know, it is obviously more expensive to buy new equipment, but you will never be set up on fresh gear better than with a shop tech at a shop like Arlberg or Allspeed or Gorham Bike and Ski or something like that. But if you know what you're looking for, not only are there places like Play It Again Sports, but the Facebook Marketplace and community buy and sell groups on Facebook can be a really great source for skis. I have both bought and sold skis that way. Craigslist as well, another place. Uncle Henry's, you know, the Great Maine Institution is another one that you can get stuff from. But you know, one of my dad's friends up at Sugarloaf, like famously used to get skis at the transfer station there, so you can really get them anywhere. Yeah.
I
You
did
might be able to guess who, but I'm not going to say.
Yeah, I did a story on that a few years ago and talked to some shops, and I think it was the ski shop in Rockport had said that, and it's the one that works with the Camden Snowball.
Main Sport probably, or
in
yeah.
Rockland.
Yeah, maybe.
One of the ski owners had said they welcome people to bring in their used equipment to check it out, and he recommended, like with a lot of things, fitting your foot and in a shoe is tricky business. So if you're going to spend the money on something new, get the boots and the bindings that are new, and then get the skis. Get used skis instead.
Absolutely. I would agree with that 100%. And thank you, Sandy, in the chat. Side Country Sports in Rockland.
That's it.
That's the name of the place.
Andrew Daly, I think, is one of the co-owners, and he was the one who said he's more than happy to look at used gear and steer people in the right direction because he wants to get them into the sport and he wants them to be happy in the sport.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of other local shops. There's a great local shop in Jay, and of course there's Happy Tunes up at Sugarloaf. There's ski shops in Bethel. There's all sorts of local ski shops, and they're a wealth of information, far more than we can give. And it's just a question of going in and asking them and bringing in your used gear, seeing if they're willing to take a look at it and help you. Yeah,
and just to that point, I think I don't have any recommendations for Nordic shops just because I don't ski as much, although Beyond Gorham Bike and Ski has a great cross-country ski department. But people before this chat had asked about backcountry skiing as well. And Alpenglow up in Orono, I think there's not a better shop in New England in terms of backcountry gear and knowledge. So definitely it's worth the drive. If you're going to be dropping the money and then traveling to go backcountry skiing, you want to go with the best. And I would say go with them.
Well, moving on to some of the questions that we got, that was a similar sort of question people asked. Some that came in was, what is the best family pass for your value? What is the best place to take skate ski lessons? What is the best area to bring your kids? What are some overarching recommendations you give or more tips and guidance for finding what people will consider the best place rather than giving a laundry list of your favorites?
Yeah, I think, like, honestly, to go back to that idea of the product being good anywhere in Maine, whatever resort is closest to you or whichever one you can afford. There's no one that's doing lessons in Maine that's not doing really good lessons. There's nowhere you can go that you're not going to have a good experience in terms of doing that. At least in my experience of, it's been a while since I took lessons, but talking with other people that are taking lessons, I think in terms of Nordic, I love Pineland Farms, which is really close to me here in Yarmouth, but Sunday River and Sugarloaf and Saddleback and Lost Valley and Johnny all have Nordic areas and do Nordic rentals and rentals for sure, lessons possibly. So, you'll want to do your own research. But like we've talked about before, Ski Maine, again, their raison d'etre, the reason they exist is to talk about and promote and connect people with the ski areas in the state of Maine. So they are an incredible resource. They have separate pages on their website for Nordic skiing and cross country and downhill skiing, and they represent both types and can send you to the right people in terms of getting set up for lessons and stuff like that.
Yeah, they are a great resource. And another one that we didn't mention for people with small children, but is Winter Kids.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Winter Kids. Unfortunately for me, fortunately for the state of Maine, they started the 5th grade passport when I was in 6th grade, and then then just added years after that. So unfortunately, I never got to partake. But incredible organization in terms of getting people out to ski in the state.
Another cool question that came in by email right before this was somebody asking, I would appreciate if Josh could discuss changes in boots and skis. I have 20-year-old skis and boots that are in great shape, but ...
Yeah, it is, again, kind of like I was talking before, it's more incremental than game changing. The technology in a lot of the most important ways, conveying us down a mountain is the same as it's been for a century, but obviously the details of it change a lot. In terms of boots, I feel like generally speaking, there's been less changes in boots beyond them getting a little bit more comfortable. I think for years, the ski industry was stuck in recreational boots, so boots for the general skier, being kind of like a knockoff version of race boots, downhill alpine boots. So they would be very stiff, very uncomfortable. I think that boots these days tend to be a little bit softer, a little bit more flexible, a little bit more room in the toe box and a little bit wider. So they aren't just built for people with shorter, skinnier feet, which for a lot of people, including me who have wider feet, just has meant a much more comfortable ride. The biggest changes, 20 years in terms of skis. So 20 years ago would have been the start of the hourglass side cut parabolic ski. So if you picture skis in the past being kind of flat and straight, they now have a side cut. So they're shaped like an hourglass, which really assists with turning more than anything else. Helps to initiate and exit turns with a bit of a pop. So my dad used to say, the skis do all the work for you now, which isn't exactly the case, but it definitely was, it feels a lot easier than it did on straight skis, especially if you're not on a groomer. And the other big changes are in terms of camber and rocker. So rockered skis are skis that if you picture the bottom of where your foot is on the ski, the tip and the tail are bent up, with the idea being that they'll float more in cruddier snow or in powder. It was like 2002, Shane McConkey, who was a West Coast freestyle skier, kind of innovated in terms of rockered skis. And then camber is the idea of a ski, if you think of where your foot is on the ski, the tip and the tail being bent down towards the snow, with the idea that you're getting some kind of kinetic energy. So once you have your foot on it, if you're going into a turn, if you're popping off the snow, you're building up pressure and then popping out of it with that camber on the ski. And most new skis now are side cut, and they have a camber, a rocker, or some sort of combination. Like my J skis are rockered in the tip and then cambered, so it's kind of an S shape from front to back.
A question that came in related to when we were talking about Winter Kids, and they put it in the chat. I'd like to remind people, for the time that we have left, please put questions in the Q&A. And I'll also add that looks like there's quite a few questions there. We won't get to all the questions maybe tonight, but Josh will address them eventually in one of his columns, or
what the columns are for, absolutely.
or on the the page, the promo page for this event, there will be some questions answered there. But this question that came into the chat, Josh, can you please share the opportunities for teens, a demographic not supported by winter kids, and a group that is ready to do things with peers, not parents?
Yeah, it's been a while since I was a teen, and I agree that it's an underrepresented demographic. So I think that most places still have some sort of junior or teen ticket. So it's definitely worth knowing that it will not be as expensive as an adult ticket at a lot of places to get out on skis or a snowboard. I saw someone in the chat just mentioned ski academies. That's obviously a higher level thing, but Gould Academy or Carabasset Valley Academy, excuse me, up at Sugarloaf are both options for people that really want to, teens that really want to pursue the sport in a kind of professional competition style. And I know when I was growing up, again, I can't speak to this because it's been a couple decades, but after school ski programs or school ski trips were always my favorite way to affordably get out skiing with people in my peer group. They often included lessons or rentals for people that didn't have the equipment or hadn't been before. I have to assume that sort of thing is still happening in some fashion. I don't know of any that exist outside of the academic structure. I don't know of any that exist outside of a school program doing it themselves. But at least hopefully schools are still doing that in some fashion.
Shawnee Peak does a huge business with the schools going up there, busing up there, after school groups going. And probably along those lines, night skiing could be a great option for people who, when their kids get out of school, going in the evening to a lot of local mountains. Lost Valley has, you might have mentioned that when you were doing the roundup of what's new. Lost Valley has a ton of night skiing terrain, I believe. Obviously Shawnee Peak has the most night terrain in New England, and there's a bunch of other little mountains that have night terrain as well.
Yeah, I would say the majority, other than the big three, Sugarloaf, Sunday River, and Saddleback. And even Sunday River has had some limited twilight skiing in the last couple of years as well. So there's a lot of options. Yeah.
Camden Snow Bowl has night skiing?
It does. That was all of my skiing growing up, was at the Camden Snow Bowl under the lights. And my mother is a secretary at an elementary school, and I know they still have a school skiing program as well. So not quite that teen level, but yeah, it's still happening. One of the delights of growing up skiing was at Lost Valley, seeing the buses of kids come in every night of the week, basically. It is incredible. Felt like every district within an hour was bringing kids to Lost Valley during the week.
You mean Camden Snow Bowl?
I mean Lost Valley, but yeah, I guess it wasn't when I was growing up. I should say when I was in my teens and 20s. So.
Oh, cool. Another really cool question that came in by email, and I don't know the answer to this, or if you'll know the answer to this, but I think it's worth throwing it out because maybe someone will look into this and something will come of it. Bus trips. Are there any bus trips for cross-country skiing near Portland within 1 to 2 hours away? I do not have transportation.
I think, unfortunately, generally speaking, the ski bus trip, like I know that the Maine ski shuttles ran through 2019, but that was the last regular, bus trip that I knew of. I do know from a summer column about hiking that I wrote a couple of years ago that there are lots of options for cross-country skiing, like Gilsland Farms that I mentioned, that are on the public transit lines in and around Portland. So from Portland on the metro going north, you can go to Falmouth, and then on the breeze, you can go to Yarmouth, Freeport, and Brunswick, where there are certainly options. And the Lakes Region Explorer goes all the way out to Bridgeton. So you would definitely want to check with those bus services to see if you'd be allowed to bring your cross-country skis and poles onto them. But if you are, that would be the first thing I would think of that would give you a lot of options just off the bus line, either headed out 302 or headed up Route 1.
Here's a question that just came in on the Q&A, and I think I can take a stab at it. And please chime in with anything related to this. Can you do an update and or brief description of Maine Nordic ski centers? And I know I did a Nordic ski roundup in the fall, and a lot of Nordic centers are doing upgrades similarly to the Alpine areas. Bethel Village Trails, which is its former name, now it's called Inland Woods and Trails, I believe. In Bethel, the Bethel Trails out of the Bethel Inn, they expanded terrain and added a whole new loop. And they got a new groomer, I believe. So they've done upgrades. And also in Bethel, Carter's Cross Country Ski Center. Last year, they expanded the indoors, which they were going to do anyway at the rental area, but it worked out during the pandemic because it could really spread people out. And it sounds like they added a very cool food truck this year. So the Nordic Centers, we didn't really touch on them, but they're definitely doing upgrades as well. And Pineland Farms is always, as you said, I think Pineland Farms might be the biggest Nordic Center in the state. And Pineland Farms, which has snowmaking, right? That's kind of unusual for a Nordic Center. They're constantly updating. I think Matt Sebastiansky at Pineland Farms told me they normally didn't sell off their rental fleet. But last year they did. They had so many demands, people who used the equipment and wanted to buy it. They definitely sold it off last year. And I think that was the first year they did it, just because so many new people were going up to Pineland Farms. Have you heard of upgrades at Nordic Centers?
I would direct people either to Ski Maine for their Nordic updates or to your column. I will not pretend to know the answer off the top of my head. I'm not a good enough liar to do that. So I will I will direct people to the people that do know. I will say, I mentioned that Pineland Farms is my favorite of the Nordic ski areas. Ski centers. I think in terms of largest, I think that Sugarloaf's is bigger. I think that there are some others that might be a little bit bigger as well. But if we're looking at access around Portland, I just love Pineland so dearly. Between the trails and the snowshoe trails and the market there at Pineland, it's just a magical place. So.
What about renting? Somebody had asked, can you rent cross-country skis in Portland?
You can. Gorham Bike and Ski. You can rent them. I think it's $20 a day or $100 for a week.
To just take them out to Deering Oaks or Riverside?
I think that every other place in the Portland area that does Nordic rentals that I know of, like Smiling Hill Farms or Pineland or something like that, are just rentals to use on their premises. I think Gorham Bike and Ski is the only one where you could rent them at a shop and then take them out on whichever trails you'd like.
And you sort of touched on this, but this person's question kind of, I wanted to read it for them. Somebody had sent in the question, finding that as I'm getting older, perhaps going back to some backcountry equipment might be more comfortable for downhill. Current downhill equipment is heavy to carry and turn. So I'm thinking, would backcountry equipment be lighter? It's not really significantly lighter.
No, it is lighter mostly because of the binding setup on backcountry stuff. And I should have mentioned when I was talking about rocker and camper and all that stuff, that skis have gotten lighter as well in terms of construction, fiberglass, stuff like that. They've gotten a lot lighter. But yeah, if I were to suggest that people pick up backcountry, I don't think that the lightness of the equipment would be the reason that I would drive people towards it, I suppose, is the way to answer that question.
A question just came in, and it's from our CEO, Lisa DeSisto. So I feel compelled to ask Lisa's question, although she says, sounds like it was emailed to her from someone else. Have either of you experienced the Hutt system in Maine?
I've actually never skied it, which is one of my great regrets, although I know they have opened back up, so I hope to do it sometime soon. I've hiked Hutt to Hutt during the summer, but never skied it, so I can't speak to that. Although, have you?
I have skied up to Poplar, the first one that opened in Carabasset Valley, and I also have hiked, backpacked from Hutt to Hutt with a friend, which is, it's amazing in the summer because I don't think they're typically it's probably changed now. I think this was 7 or 8 years ago. It was so quiet in the summer, which was really nice. But yeah, I have skied the trails. I haven't skied from Hutt to Hutt, but I've skied the trails, which is another free trail system.
I know we're getting to the end of time here, but I just wanted to mention, because I saw Nancy Marshall and mentioned in the chat, the AMC Hutts, which are also great. But that did remind me, there's an incredible book on backcountry skiing in New England by David Goodman that AMC Books has put out. There's been a new edition basically every 10 years, and the most recent edition just came out this last year. So it's up to date in terms of trails and gear, not just in Maine, but all over New England, for people that are looking into doing backcountry skiing more seriously. I, of course, recommend first that you talk with a guide like Acadia Mountain Guides or something like that. But if you want a book with resources and trails to go to, David Goodman's book from AMC Books about backcountry skiing in New England is unparalleled.
Another great resource is Granite Backcountry Alliance, which is based in New Hampshire, but they're starting to create backcountry glade terrain. And they did that a few years ago on the backside of Black Mountain. So that's a good website to go to if somebody wants to get into backcountry skiing, is the Granite Backcountry Alliance.
Yeah, they've done some cool like educational programming in Portland as well. I know just over the last month or two.
We are at time, and I just want to remind everyone that all the questions that came in that we didn't answer will be answered on the webpage at the Portland Press Herald website. That was the promotion for this event. And Josh, in the weeks and months ahead, likely will maybe use some of these questions as column fodder and expand a little bit more.
I'll try to give credit where it's due, absolutely.
And enlighten us with other good alpine and Nordic skiing information. Thanks so much, Josh.
So much for thank you for doing this, and thanks to everyone for attending and all the great questions. I know you caught some of us on our heels for a couple of them, which is the fun part of doing this. So thanks so much.
Definitely, and everybody have a great winter and get out skiing.